Awesome. Perfect. So, Reggie, welcome to Gridiron Showdown. This is the first actual interview. So it's such an honor to have you on, and just thank you for joining.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you just want to go ahead and hop into it?
Of course.
Awesome. Perfect. So Reggie, so obviously I know I did a little research. You're from Beaumont, Texas. So how was playing football growing up? Like, what were you like in like middle school to high school? Like, were you very sports oriented? Were you always just playing, or what?
Well, I was very sports oriented. I didn't feel confidence from my coach and stuff that a lot of people did, because I was what we call a gentle giant. I was always bigger than everyone else, but I never had a mean streak. And all my coaches, that was my drawback as far as being a football player, because athletically I was there, but I wasn't mean enough. But hey, history took care of that, so I'm not worried about it.
Yes, sir. How big were you like back in high school?
I stopped growing in the ninth grade. I've been 6'6" since I was 14 years old.
Oh my gosh, you had the size back then.
Well, the size, but not the balance. I was a very awkward kid. I couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. I started catching up with myself by my freshman, sophomore year in college.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. So did a ton of schools like recruit you based on your size?
In my sophomore year, I got a lot of letters. My junior year, I had less. And my senior year, very few.
Gotcha.
I visited a few colleges, and West Texas State at the time period was very adamant about me coming up and seeing them. So that's one reason.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you remember some of the other offers you ended up receiving?
Nope.
Gotcha.
That's 40, 50 years ago. I don't remember that far back.
No, I gotcha. Obviously you said WT was pretty adamant about you going in. So what ended up being that just driving factor?
You going to West Texas?
Yeah.
They were the ones that recruited me the hardest. They came to my basketball games. I think Don Davis came to one of my track meets. They came to my house. They did everything right as far as my parents and I were concerned. They showed strong interest in me, and told me how I could help their team almost immediately. And that's why I chose West Texas.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What was like, obviously in your college career, you played all 4 years at WT, right? Like there wasn't. Correct. Okay, awesome. Did you play with or against any players that like made it to the NFL as well?
Well, the year I got drafted, we had 5 guys had a shot. Darrell Hemphill was drafted, Milton Baker was drafted, Elvin Kelly got a walk-on possibility, and a few others from the team. I also mentored under a couple of guys that went before me. William Fife used to come back and talk to us. He played in the NFL for a few years. There are a lot of guys that got a shot from WT that went up there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I saw as I was doing my research, like in the 60s and the 70s, WT had a ton of players going to the NFL, even like Mercury Morris and like Jesse Powell and a couple of those guys. But obviously, like, I mean, did you ever hear about Jamarcus Webb coming out of WT?
I don't remember that name, no.
Gotcha. He's an offensive tackle. He currently plays on the Colts, so I just wasn't sure if you had heard about him or not. But
I haven't kept up with WT very much. I've been trying to. I haven't been keeping up much football period for the last few years. So I've had some things happen that I had to focus on. I just started getting back into football last year, so I'll probably start trying to keep it with my old alma mater here pretty soon.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you have a favorite story or memory from your time at WT?
Football story would be my roommate and I was very competitive. And I remember there used to be a drill called Shotgun Alley. It's when 2 players go against each other one-on-one.
Gotcha.
My roommate and I, of course, neither one was going to admit who was better than the other. And that day I had a couple of headaches. I'll put it that way. The next day I went to practice and found out my helmet was cracked. So he was the one that cracked me. He's the only person who's ever cracked a helmet on my head.
Oh my
from
gosh.
high school through the pros. Nobody's ever cracked the helmet except for him.
Hmm.
So that's one of the memories. Coming back from behind against New Mexico State back in my junior year.
Hmm.
They had us down, I think, 28-3, 28-7 at halftime. We came back and beat them something like 54-28, something like that.
Wow.
That was one of my things that really stood out in my mind and in my heart and helped me to be a better coach, because I can honestly tell students, players, whatever,
Hmm.
that as long as you don't give up, you always have a chance, because I was a part of that. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's awesome. So with being a coach, did you just go to WT for sports and exercise science, or what was your major?
major was physical education.
Okay,
I
awesome.
wanted to teach and coach football at the high school level.
Mhm.
When I graduated college, I didn't think I was going to get drafted. I had plans on going to the Army
Wow.
after fourth year, and when I got drafted, all my plans obviously.
Mhm.
Um, but my plan was to go to the Army, put in my 20, and then come out and teach and coach football.
That's so insane. So, I mean, you didn't even anticipate getting drafted, did you?
No, I stayed on draft day. My roommate and I stayed. Elvin Keller was my roommate,
Hmm.
and we stayed in to watch the draft because we all thought he was going to draft him the first day.
Hmm.
And I got this call on the first day of the second round.
Hmm.
So needless to say, we took the second day off too, just wait for him to get drafted that day also. So no, I did not expect it. So I was sitting on my butt doing nothing, ready to go into do my tour in the Army and
Hmm.
the whole 9 yards, start do some jogging and stuff. But after I got drafted, I had to shift gears very, very rapidly.
Yeah. I mean, that,
Start working out, started getting real. So
yeah. So, I mean, like with you, like not even thinking about getting drafted and you going to with the 51st overall pick, I mean, that's a huge jump. Like, did you so obviously being a second round pick, there's a bit higher expectations than what would be for later round picks. Did you have those high expectations for yourself since you got drafted 51st, or?
I've always had high expectations for myself. I've never stepped on the football
Mhm.
field and went half speed or thought that I was ever going to be beat. I always thought I should be the best and I could be the best, so I worked towards that goal. When I had the opportunity in the NFL, I went in a rookie camp. I was very confident in the camp. I did really, really well in that camp with all the rookies around. So I had a week of patting myself on the back.
Mhm.
Then the vets came in, and I got a wake up call.
Yeah. Did you? So I've heard that there's usually these like the rookie initiations or whatnot. Did y'all have to do anything like that? Did you have a story like that?
I never had a rookie initiation. I was a second round draft choice.
Gotcha.
Usually, first and third round draft choice doesn't have to go through all that stuff because on
Ah,
average they make the team.
yeah.
You
That makes a lot of
know, so
sense.
then the fourth round and later, yeah, they could, and depending on how the team accepts them,
Mhm.
they could be harassed. At least back then. Nowadays, politics won't let that happen quite so much.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So just before we hop into sort of talking about your pro career a little bit, I wanted to sort of go back. So I actually heard prior to you going into the draft, you actually played a little bit of basketball at WT.
Yeah, basketball coach recruited me later in the season, and I played for about I think 2 weeks. That's about it.
How
Uh,
many
I
how many minutes did you play?
I don't remember. I didn't play very many. I always thought it was a propaganda ploy to help people come to the game since everybody knew I'd been drafted. But and I did play intramural basketball, and I was pretty good at intramural basketball, but
Mhm.
I just wasn't ready for that level of basketball. But I
Yeah, I got
enjoyed
you.
it.
Yeah, so did that help out with your conditioning any? Like, I mean, obviously going into training camp and whatnot.
It helped. Basketball's always helped out. I played
Mhm.
basketball my whole life. That was my favorite sport. I love basketball more than football. And because I tried so hard to be so good at that, I was faster, quicker, more agile than the average guy my size. I think that contributed to me being drafted in the NFL and doing as good as I had done in the past.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I was sort of looking over your resume, and you played 14 years in the NFL, and coming from West Texas State, West Texas A&M, I mean, that's a huge deal. Not everybody's had that longevity in their career. Who or what do you necessarily credit with having the longevity in the NFL that you ended up having?
My mentors and my
Mhm.
coaches. When I first got in the league, I had a mentor named Marvin Powell. He's a 5-time All-Pro, and
Mhm.
took me under his wing and taught me the ropes in the NFL. Then I ended up getting a coach named Dan Radakovich, who would talk to all his players, bring them up to his level, and treat them like men. And then I went to, after I left New York and went to LA, I was with the Raiders, and I met Art Shell. You
Mhm.
know, he was a mentor. He was somebody that gave me advice. Now, I was very fortunate throughout my career to meet people that were very good at what they did,
Mhm.
and even better, very good at teaching what they knew. And I'm not just talking about football. I'm talking about life and other things as well. And that is a big contribution to my longevity. It's the fact that
Mhm.
I listened to these people, I worked hard for these people, and I also taught those coming up behind me some tricks of the trades as well.
Mhm.
So
Abs-
I was mentored, and I became a mentor as I got older.
Absolutely, yeah. So you talked about just like the different coaches and the coaching branches that you ended up like sort of going under. Obviously you played under Mike Shanahan your last 2 years in Denver. So do you necessarily credit any of those coaches for helping you go into coaching, or sort of giving you the inspiration or anything you can carry over into your coaching career now?
Well, my coaching technique comes from three coaches.
Hmm.
That's Dan Radakovich, Art Shell, and Alex Gibbs.
Hmm.
Um, Alex was the fiery one. He loses his mind and sometimes on the sideline.
Hmm.
Radakovich is kind of funny. He tried to be kind of wild to try and entertain you to get you to do the work. And Art Shell was methodical in his
Hmm.
teachings. So um, I started listening to them and watching how players responded to them and watching how they coached me, because I was
Hmm.
kind of a difficult person to coach. Because you yell at me, I go in the tank and I don't do anything right. If you talk
Hmm.
to me, I'll try my best. Now, talking may not get to me, but I'll try my best for you if you talk to me. Alex did that, Rad did that, and Art definitely did that. And
Hmm.
I credit them for my career more than anything else, because if they would have been yelling and screamers, I wouldn't have been out there for very long. And talking and treating me like a man helped me to play longer and teach others how to play longer as well and better.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like probably that type of coaching style necessarily translates to everybody like sort of going into football now, especially with you coaching. I'm sure that helps out a lot.
Yeah, it helps out because I know what I'm talking about, and the kids listen to me, and they also know that no matter what happens, the head coach has the final word. So
Hmm.
you have sometimes they learn different things. They learn the technique of playing, and they learn how to deal with life, because you have bosses, and no matter what you think, the boss is going to always be right, and you have to adhere to that. So I'm not just teaching football when I teach young players. I'm trying to teach them life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, with having your career, you had a lot of different stops, but you played with a ton of Hall of Famers, whether you believe it or not. It's crazy. But I was wondering, I was sort of going to go through just based on position, sort of ask you a question about each position, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Awesome. So for the quarterbacks, he played with Joe Montana, John Elway, and Warren Moon. They're all just so different, and they just bring certain different things to the game. But what was a characteristic that necessarily distinguished each one of them from each other, would you say?
They were real. Well, first of all, the characteristics that brought them all together, they were all real people.
Hmm.
Okay. They knew they were good and they knew they were leaders, but they didn't flaunt it or try to rub anybody's nose in it. What
Hmm.
differentiated them is Warren Moon being one of the few black quarterbacks in his time period. He had to walk a specific path and do it well and do it without making any mistakes, because he knew he was being watched. He did it well. John Elway and I were it's kind of funny because we had nicknames. I call him
Hmm.
Pops, he called me Grandpa. but because I was about a year older than he was, and it was mutual respect. But John, I enjoyed working with him, and when I had the opportunity to block for him, I made sure I did my best so he wouldn't get touched. Unfortunately, I didn't have much time to block for Joe Montana. I wish I would have with the Chiefs. That's the one regret I have. Montana's a great quarterback. Better yet, he's a great person. He took care of his offensive linemen. We'd always go out to eat Thursday night, and he'd be picking up the tab, the whole 9 yards, and we wouldn't talk football. We'd just sit there and talk and have fun. And he was real people, and I enjoyed working with him.
That's awesome. As for running backs, you ended up playing with Eric Dickerson, Marcus Allen, Terrell Davis, and Roger Craig. So another huge, just very talented pool of like position players. Who ended up being one of the easier guys to block for? Like, obviously they all probably had great vision being in the Hall of Fame, but if you could distinguish one from another just based on how well they can visualize a hole and hit that hole, who would you say ranks as the top?
Well, I couldn't. Eric Dickerson was very good at hitting the hole, and he and I had a good relationship. But I really couldn't tell you which one was better than the other. I think they're all pretty much the same boat. Now, Marcus loved blocking. I know that much because many times I'm blocking somebody and that person I'm blocking disappears, and I turn to my left and my right, and Marcus is standing there snickering because he just knocked him out. So Marcus was more complete as far as I can remember back level blocking because he loved running the ball, but he loved blocking as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that to be pretty surprising because a lot of running backs now, they're big. Like Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott, a lot of those guys. I feel like they don't necessarily want to block, but it's sort of, back in the day, whenever you had bigger guys, it was a little bit tougher to block, I'm sure, with Marcus Allen, but he enjoyed it a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, back in the day, running backs had to do it all. It's like today's football is more specialized. You're running back, you basically need you to be able to run the ball. Blocking is a secondary thing. But back in the 80s, you're running back, you have to be able to block too, because that's what was needed. And that's why people like Marcus Allen, Walter Payton, Freeman McNeil, all those guys, Eric Dickerson, stood out because they were complete running backs, complete football players. They were able to do it all.
Absolutely. As for wide receivers, you ended up playing with Tim Brown, Shannon Sharp, and Chris Carter. And absolutely crazy to even think of playing with those guys. But do you have any good Shannon Sharp stories? Seems like he's always out there, so I feel like you got to have at least one.
I got a few, but I can't talk to you about Shannon Sharp. Sorry, that's not going to work. There's certain things a man needs to keep to himself, and I'm going to let that leave that alone. But Shannon, I'm telling you, Shannon was good people. And Shannon spoke how he felt. He spoke the truth. And I respected that about him. And he lived his life as he saw fit. And I respected that. And that's pretty much what I can tell you about Shannon.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. But obviously with him, he had Sterling Sharp, his brother was actually in the NFL for a while, and he had like a pretty serious neck injury, right? I feel like that probably drove him to the success that he ended up having, just having his brother as a coach and as sort of a player prior to him. But he's a very well put together player. And I always just like watching his stuff on the shows that he has. He's always a pretty crazy guy. But let me down real quick. Okay, so obviously with you just playing all of your years, you also played against a lot of defensive ends and defensive tackles. Mark Gastineau, John Randall, and Howie Long. So I feel like they varied in terms of just what they brought to the table. But did you have to guard any of these guys in practice? And who do you think taught you the most or was the hardest to guard?
Mark and I were teammates. But Mark was a one-dimensional player. Mark Gastineau was I don't want to say a freak of nature, but he was different. He came in at a time when the NFL was full of big, strong, slow, road grading offensive linemen. And he would beat most of them in pass rush. And then my style of offensive line started coming to the league, and he didn't have as much success. And I mean that by athletic, able to move, not very big, but able to block. And Mark started having problems. And when my class of offensive linemen came out in '82, his sack number started going down because he couldn't use his speed to beat everybody. If you want to talk about people who have taught me a lot about the game from a defensive line perspective, Joe Klecko taught me a lot about how defensive linemen think and how they move. Reggie White taught me a lot about competition and separating emotions in the game. You know, Reggie did that very well for me. I always say about Joe Klecko. Howie Long taught me a lot of things about perseverance and continuing to do it, because Howie is as old as I was, but he gotten beat up and he would always come to practice ready to play. He wouldn't back down. I played against some Hall of Famers. The one that I'm gonna tell you now that I've never ever learned how to block was Richard Dent.
Was who?
To this day, I still have nightmares about how he kicked my butt in that game.
Who was this?
Richard Dent, Chicago Bears, 1986.
Gotcha. Wow. I mean, they had a good defense in '85 too. So I mean, they're stacked everywhere. And I mean,
yes.
I'm glad that, I mean, it's just nice to, of course, like in the NFL, you obviously want to do your best, but it's also nice to, like, whenever you do get beat, you're going to learn something that you can carry on with you further on into your career.
He taught me that I was human, because everybody else I can battle with. I finally found somebody that I couldn't touch, and I could not touch them. And I was very happy that was the first and only time I ever had to block him. I don't know if I ever would have blocked him if I had to play him again, because he was that good.
Absolutely. So, I mean, did you prefer like a run blocking or pass blocking better? Which did you end up liking better?
I love pass blocking. I enjoy pass blocking, because pass blocking is a cerebral thing. It's not really physical. It's mathematics. That's all it is. And once you understand that and you design your pass set to accommodate that theory, then you'll last longer in the league. I think the reason I last so long is because I can pass block all the way up to my last year playing. Now, run blocking went down. I can pass block very, very well for a long time.
Yeah, as you said, the league is becoming way more specialized in terms of it's such an offensive passing league. It's such a offensive oriented league. I mean, you see the wide receivers, if they get hit or if the quarterback gets looked at the wrong way, there's a 15-yard penalty. You think you would have a bit more success in today's NFL than you would have 20, 30 years ago?
In today's NFL, I don't know if I'd have more success, but I definitely have more longevity, because they understand the science of the game and the science of the human body now. So practices aren't as long. They don't bang as hard as they did back in the 80s and the 70s and early 90s. So the players have a little more longevity in their careers. That's why you have 40, 50-year-old, 40, 45-year-old quarterbacks out there still playing. But the league has changed. I'm not going to say it's getting softer. They've just gotten smarter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir. In terms of, so I know you said you haven't kept up with football all that much, but can you think of anybody that is in today's NFL in terms of offensive line that you think is a very complete offensive lineman specimen in your eyes?
Like I said, not right now, because I've only had one half of a season I was trying to focus on.
Yeah.
And I haven't really, the last offensive lineman I really watched close was a guy named Will Shields. And that's because his rookie year I was with the Chiefs and I was kind of his mentor. So I always watched him and tried to make sure he did everything that he was taught to do. But I was saying that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So no, I haven't kept up. If we have the same conversation 2 years from now, I may have some names rattle off for you. But right now, I'm trying to get back into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, with being a coach and having a COVID shortened season, what was that like? Like, how did y'all end up adapting and adjusting to sort of help out with COVID? Did y'all end up playing where you coach at?
Well, like I said, I'm in Missouri, and we played a full season in Missouri. The football team went to the playoffs. I think got knocked out in the first round. But we made it through. We didn't have many problems with it because everything was locked down pretty tight. We'd have some weeks that we'd have to cancel games either because we were in quarantine or the other team did, but it was very few and far between.
Absolutely. No, that definitely makes a ton of sense. So I was, well, like I said, whenever I was reading through just your resume, I had seen that you had actually went to NFL Europe and you coached over there for a summer, right?
3 summers.
3 summers. Okay. So I saw that you had coached for the Scottish Claymores in 2003.
Yep.
So that was a year before the International Pathways Player Program. So like where the NFL has started recruiting foreign players in 2004. So that was a year before that. What did you end up taking from that part of NFL Europe, coaching over there in the summers and bringing that over back into your coaching? What is there anything that you learned in particular?
Well, the thing is, it's easier to coach grown men than it is
Mhm.
coach kids, especially when their jobs online. You have a lot of guys out there going to NFL Europe trying to make a team because they know the next step, if they do well, could be the NFL.
Mhm.
So it's easier to coach guys like that because you have to tell them 2, 3, 4 times to do anything.
Mhm.
And like I said, I coached 3 years, and when I coached them, we did well. I don't know, a lot of them didn't make the NFL. I don't know why, but
Mhm.
I thought probably just didn't fit the mold that team, specific team, wanted them to have.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, was there a language barrier whenever you ended up coaching the players, or were they just were they able to understand what you were trying to communicate with them?
Fortunately, you had a percentage of players that were foreigners. Almost all the players over there were American,
Mhm.
so barrier was not a big problem. And the good thing is, offensive linemen are intelligent to begin with.
Mhm.
All of them knew English, so later with in any of that. And to be honest with you, I don't think there was any person on the team that I coached that needed a translator.
Mhm. That's
Well,
awesome. I was sort of curious. How big was the league whenever you were coaching? How many teams were there?
oh, that's hard. I want to say 12.
Mhm.
That sounds like a good number. I can't
Mhm.
tell you exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, did you just start coaching last year?
What do you mean?
Like I thought, did you? So your current coaching position, did you just start coaching last year, or how long have you been coaching after you went to NFL Europe?
I was coaching before I went to NFL Europe. I coached high school ball in 2020,
Oh, okay.
so 2019 in Missouri,
Mhm.
and I've been coaching ever since.
Wow, that's awesome. That's pretty cool. What were you doing? What were you doing like in between that time, whenever you were finishing up with your career and then your coaching career? Were you doing anything in between?
Trying to figure out what to do next.
Yes, sir.
Lost. I was extremely lost, didn't know what to do. I wanted to coach in the NFL, but I shut some doors because of some things that happened, and I was not very intelligent in the way I
Mhm.
handled certain things. The spoiled brat syndrome. But I learned my lesson, and I learned
Mhm.
sometimes things happen for a reason.
Mhm.
And my wife and I moved to Missouri, and I started coaching at Buffalo High School, and met a friend who's the head coach there, and we've been friends ever since. And I've learned about football from even high school coaches. If
Mhm.
you allow yourself to be open to anything, you will learn from anyone.
Mhm.
And that's what happened. I've enjoyed
So
my career.
so as far as moving to Missouri, did you just go there for coaching, or was there something else that brought you out to Missouri?
Brought me out to Missouri is one of the cheapest places in the country to live.
Mhm.
My wife was trying to find a place where I could retire and never have to work.
Mhm.
So we retired in Missouri. I got substitute teaching, started helping supplement my income and the whole 9 yards. And then the stock market crashed, and I
Mhm.
had to get a real job. So
Mhm.
fortunately, I had been an assistant coach, volunteer coach at Buffalo High School, and started a full-time sub there. So I just went to school, got my T certificate, and started doing it for real. And I
Mhm.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're putting that physical education degree from WT to good use.
I have never taught physical education. I take it back. I taught all the 20 plus years I've been teaching. I've taught phys ed maybe 1 year.
Wow.
I've been I've been teaching alternative school students, the so-called bad kids, most of my career, and enjoyed every second of it.
That's awesome.
Because you have kids that people call bad kids, and when you sit down and talk to them, then you start to understand what they're about. And you realize they're not bad kids, they just do bad things. And most of the time, if you listen to them, the mistakes they make, they won't make.
Absolutely. Reggie, thank you for joining for the interview. Is there anything else you would want to say before you end up hopping off? Anything you want to promote? Anything you want to say?
Well, right now, I'm starting to try and get into voiceovers, doing podcasts myself in the near future. But first thing I have to do is get me a house, because I sold my house about 2 or 3 months ago, and I still don't have a house to move into. The housing market is crazy around here. But no, my next career is going to be voiceovers, and doing something to help out, doing something that I can use this voice that I have, because I've been told my whole life that I had a special voice.
Yes, sir.
I try to be modest because I just don't buy into it, but I've been told enough times now I got to try and do something with it. So I'll find out in the future what's going to happen.
Yes, sir. Well, if you ever get that podcast going, just be sure to let me know and we'll get you back on here.
Thank you very much. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, Reggie, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you.
All right. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.